Discovery. The sleek, silver hull of the Zarlian exploration vessel, Nebula Seeker, glided silently through the inky void of space. Captain Cinera stood at the helm, her four eyes fixed on the swirling, chaotic mass of the Whirlpool Nebula looming before them. The gaseous tendrils seemed to reach out, beckoning the ship closer to its turbulent heart. "Status report," Cinera commanded, her voice a melodious trill that carried easily across the bridge. First Officer Veltok consulted his console, antenna twitching with concentration. "All systems nominal, Captain. We're maintaining a safe distance from the nebula's outer boundaries." Cinera nodded, satisfaction evident in the subtle shift of her iridescent scales. The Zarlian Astrosciences Guild had tasked them with mapping the Whirlpool Nebula's erratic gravitational fields, a mission that promised to advance their understanding of cosmic phenomena. But as she gazed at the swirling chaos before them, Cinera couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary awaited them. "Captain," the sensor operator, Zoira, called out suddenly. "I'm detecting an anomalous energy signature emanating from within the nebula." Zinra's head swiveled sharply. "Origin." Zyra's fingers danced across her console. "Unclear, but it appears to be coming from a small planetoid near the nebula's core. The readings are unusual." "Define unusual," Zinra pressed, her curiosity piqued. "The energy signature doesn't match any known natural phenomena," Zyra explained, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's artificial in nature, but unlike anything in our database." A ripple of excitement passed through the bridge crew. First Officer Veltok voiced what they were all thinking: an unknown alien civilization. Cinera considered their options. The mission parameters allowed for discretionary exploration of unexpected phenomena. The potential discovery of a new spacefaring race was too tantalizing to ignore. "Plot a course to the planetoid," she ordered. "Maintain full sensor sweeps and raise shields. Let's see what we found." As the Nebula Seeker pierced the outer layers of the Whirlpool Nebula, the view outside became a kaleidoscope of swirling gases and newborn stars. Navigation became increasingly treacherous, with unexpected gravitational eddies threatening to throw them off course. But the Zarlian crew was well-trained, adjusting their trajectory with practiced ease. After several tense hours of careful maneuvering, they finally caught sight of their destination. The planetoid hung in space like a gray, pockmarked egg, unremarkable save for the faint energy signature pulsing from its surface. "Scan the surface," Shinra commanded as they entered orbit. "I want to know what's generating that energy." Zyra worked furiously at her console, her eyes widening as the data streamed in. "Captain, you're not going to believe this. I'm detecting structures on the surface. Artificial structures." A hush fell over the bridge. Shinra leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Show me." The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a high-resolution image of the planetoid surface. There, nestled in a vast crater, was an unmistakable cluster of buildings. Domes, towers, and angular structures sprawled across the barren landscape, a clear sign of intelligent design. "Impossible," Veltok breathed. "How could anyone build a colony here? The radiation levels from the nebula alone should make it uninhabitable." Sinra's mind raced with possibilities. "What else can you tell us, Sura?" The sensor operator shook her head in disbelief. "The structures appeared to be abandoned, possibly for centuries. But here's the truly baffling part: the architecture and materials. They're of human origin." A collective gasp rippled through the bridge. Humans were a known spacefaring race, but their territory was vast distances away. The idea of finding a human outpost this far from their known space, in such an inhospitable location, defied explanation. "Are you certain?" Shinra demanded. Zyra nodded emphatically. "The database is clear. These are human constructions, without a doubt." Sinra's scales shimmered with excitement and trepidation. The implications of this discovery were staggering. How had humans managed to establish a colony in this impossible location? And more importantly, what had happened to them? Prep a landing party, she decided. We need to investigate this site firsthand. As the crew bustled with activity, preparing for planetary descent, Sinra couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. They were about to step into a mystery that could reshape their understanding of human capabilities and, potentially, the balance of power in the galaxy. Hours later, Sinra led a small team across the planetoid's desolate surface. Their environmental suits protected them from the harsh conditions, but nothing could shield them from the eerie feeling of walking through a ghost town. The human structures loomed around them, a testament to incredible engineering prowess. Despite centuries of exposure to the nebula's corrosive atmosphere, many buildings remained intact, their surfaces scared but unyielding. "Over here," Veltok called out, his voice crackling through the comm system. He stood before a massive blast door, partially ajar. "I think this leads to some kind of central complex." With some effort, they managed to force the door open wider, revealing a cavernous chamber beyond. As they stepped inside, motion-activated lights flickered to life, illuminating banks of ancient computer terminals and strange, cylindrical devices lining the walls. "By the cosmic forge," Zyra breathed, her handheld scanner beeping frantically. "Captain, these machines, they're still operational, running on some kind of self-sustaining power source I've never seen before." Sinra approached one of the terminals, her gloved hand hovering over its dusty surface. "Can you access their database? We need to know what this place was, and why it was abandoned." Zyra set to work, her fingers flying over the alien interface. Minutes ticked by intense silence before she finally spoke. "I'm in. It's incredible. This wasn't just a colony, Captain. It was a research outpost, dedicated to something called Project Starbirth." "Explain," Shinra urged. "From what I can gather," Zyra continued, her voice filled with awe, "the humans were experimenting with technology capable of manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe. They were trying to create a device that could ignite new stars, reshape entire solar systems." The implications hit Sinra like a gravitational shockwave. Such technology, if real, would be nothing short of godlike. It would explain the impossible location of the outpost. They needed a volatile testing ground, far from populated space. Why would they abandon it? Veltok wondered aloud. As if in answer, a holographic projection sprang to life in the center of the chamber. A human figure, clearly a recording, spoke urgently. "This is Dr. Elena Reyes, lead scientist of Project Starbirth. If you're seeing this, it means our evacuation was successful. We've made a terrible mistake. The technology works, but it's drawn the attention of something ancient and malevolent. We thought we were gods, but we've awakened devils. To anyone who finds this outpost, destroy it. Destroy all traces of our work, or they'll come for you next." The hologram flickered and died, leaving the Zarlian explorers in stunned silence. Zinra's mind reeled. They had stumbled upon not just an unprecedented human achievement, but a potential threat to the entire galaxy. Whatever force had driven the humans from this place was still out there, possibly searching for the very technology that surrounded them. She made a decision. "Download everything you can from their databases. We're taking this information back to the Zarlian High Command. They need to know what we found here." As her crew scrambled to comply, Sinra stared at the empty space where Dr. Raya's hologram had stood. They had come seeking scientific knowledge, but had instead uncovered a cosmic horror story. Whatever came next, she knew that the fate of far more than just the Zarlian people might rest in their hands. With a final look at the abandoned human outpost, Sinra led her team back to their ship. The Nebula Seeker would soon depart, carrying with it the seeds of a conflict that would reshape the galaxy. The true nature of humanity's ambition, and the price of their hubris, was about to be revealed to the stars. Investigation. The Nebula Seeker cut through space at maximum speed, its crew working tirelessly to analyze the vast trove of data retrieved from the abandoned human outpost. Captain Sinra hadn't left the bridge in days, her 4 eyes bloodshot from countless hours staring at reports and sensor readings. "Status update," she demanded, her usually melodious voice now raspy with fatigue. Zyra, the sensor operator, looked up from her console. "We've decrypted another portion of the human database, Captain. The picture it paints is disturbing." Zinra gestured for her to continue. "Project Starbirth wasn't just about creating stars," Zyra explained, her antennae twitching nervously. "The humans were attempting to harness the power of creation itself. They believed they could manipulate the fabric of space-time, essentially rewriting the laws of physics on a localized scale." First Officer Veltok shook his head in disbelief. "But that's impossible. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical," Zyra finished, "which is why they chose the Whirlpool Nebula. They were siphoning energy directly from the formation of new stars." Sinra's scales rippled with a mix of awe and horror. The audacity of the human scientists was breathtaking. To think they could play with the fundamental forces of the universe like children with toys. "And the devils Dr. Reyes mentioned in her warning," Sinra pressed. Zyra's expression grew grave. "We found references to something called the Void Heralds. The humans believed their experiments had attracted the attention of an ancient extradimensional species, beings that exist outside our understanding of reality." A chill ran through the bridge. The idea of facing an enemy they couldn't even comprehend was terrifying. "How much of a threat do these Void Heralds pose?" Veltok asked. "Unknown," Zyra admitted. "But based on the fragmented records, they were powerful enough to force the complete abandonment of the outpost. The humans fled in terror, scattering across the galaxy to hide their tracks." Sinra's mind raced. They needed more information, and there was only one place to get it. "Set a course for Earth," she ordered. "We need to speak with the human authorities directly." The journey to Earth took weeks, even at the Nebula Seeker's impressive speed. As they approached the human homeworld, Sinra couldn't help but marvel at the bustling activity surrounding the planet. Massive orbital stations and shipyards spoke to humanity's continued expansion into the cosmos. After a tense series of communications, the Zarlian vessel was granted permission to dock at a high-security orbital facility. Zinra, along with Veltok and Zyra, were escorted to a sterile conference room where a group of stern-faced human officials awaited them. A silver-haired woman with piercing blue eyes stepped forward. "I'm Admiral Helena Chen, Earth Defense Force. I understand you've made a rather sensitive discovery." Shinra nodded, her translator converting her trills into smooth English. "We've uncovered evidence of a human research outpost in the Whirlpool Nebula. An outpost dedicated to something called Project Starbirth." The color drained from Admiral Chen's face. The other officials exchanged worried glances. That's impossible," Chen stammered. "Project Starbirth was scrubbed centuries ago. All records were purged." "Clearly, not all," Veltok interjected. "We have data recovered directly from the outpost's computers." Zyra produced a data crystal, placing it on the conference table. "Everything we found is here, including references to entities known as the Void Heralds." At the mention of the Void Heralds, one of the human officials, a bookish man with thick glasses, let out an audible gasp. Admiral Chen shot him a warning glare. "I'm afraid I'll have to confiscate that data," Chen said, reaching for the crystal. "This is a matter of human national security." Sinra's hand shot out, covering the crystal protectively. "With all due respect, Admiral, this is now a matter of galactic security. If these Void Heralds are as dangerous as your scientists believed, every spacefaring race needs to be prepared." A tense silence fell over the room. The humans exchanged meaningful looks, seeming to have a silent debate amongst themselves. Finally, Admiral Chen sighed heavily. "You're right, of course," she conceded. "But you don't understand the full scope of what you've stumbled into. The existence of Project Starbirth and the Void Heralds has been humanity's most closely guarded secret for generations." "Then enlighten us," Sinra pressed. Admiral Chen nodded to the bespectacled man who had gasped earlier. "This is Dr. Marcus Roth, one of our leading xenophysicists. He can explain." Dr. Roth stepped forward nervously, adjusting his glasses. Project Starbirth began as an attempt to solve humanity's energy crisis. We thought if we could create and harness the power of stars, we'd never want for resources again. But in our arrogance, we tapped into something we never should have touched. He paused, taking a shaky breath before continuing. "The Void Heralds aren't just another alien species. They're entities that exist in the spaces between realities. Our experiments created tears in the fabric of space-time. Tiny at first, but enough for them to sense our universe, and they hunger for it." Zyra's antenna quivered, but the outpost was abandoned centuries ago. Why haven't these beings invaded already? "They're not omnipotent," Dr. Roth explained. "The tiers we created were small, and sealing them was part of our evacuation protocol. But each time we use technology derived from Project Starbirth, we risk widening those tiers. It's a constant balance between advancing our civilization and not attracting their attention." Sinra's mind reeled at the implications. So humanity has been sitting on this catastrophic secret, advancing your technology at the risk of dooming us all. Admiral Chen's expression hardened. "We've been protecting the galaxy. Imagine if knowledge of this technology spread. How many other races would be tempted to experiment with it, not knowing the risks? We've shouldered this burden alone to keep everyone safe." Veltok scoffed. "Noble intentions, but now the secret's out. What do you intend to do about it?" Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A panicked voice came over the intercom. "Unknown vessels approaching. Energy signatures off the charts. They've breached our outer defenses." The room erupted into chaos. Admiral Chen barked orders into her communicator, while Dr. Roth turned pale as a sheet. "It's them," he whispered. "The Void Heralds. They've found us." Sinra's training kicked in, pushing aside her shock and fear. "We need to evacuate," she said firmly. "Our ship is ready for immediate departure." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. "Go. Take the data crystal and warn your people. We'll hold them off as long as we can." As they raced through the corridors of the orbital station, explosions rocking the structure around them, Sinra's mind whirled with possibilities. They had come seeking answers about an abandoned outpost and instead found themselves on the brink of an interdimensional war. They reached the Nebula Seeker just as a massive, reality-warping tear appeared in space near the station. Through it, Sinra caught a glimpse of something that defied description. A writhing mass of impossible geometries and colors that shouldn't exist. As their ship pulled away from the doomed station, Sinra watched Earth's defense fleet engage the emerging Void Heralds. Energy weapons flashed and strange. Physics-defying attacks warped space itself. "Set a course for Zarlian space, maximum speed," Sinra ordered, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her insides. "We need to warn the High Command. The galaxy needs to prepare for war." As the Nebula Seeker jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving the battle for Earth behind, Sinra knew that nothing would ever be the same. Humanity's greatest secret was out, and with it, a threat beyond imagination had been unleashed upon the cosmos. The real question now was whether the combined forces of all spacefaring races would be enough to stop the Void Heralds, or if reality itself would be torn asunder in the conflict to come. First contact. The Zarlian High Command Chamber was in uproar. Holographic displays flickered with chaotic scenes from across the galaxy. Planets under siege, space stations torn apart by impossible forces, and fleets engaged in desperate battles against foes that defied comprehension. Captain Sinra stood at the center of it all, her scaled skin pale with exhaustion. She had spent the last several rotations briefing the Zarlian leadership on the Void Herald threat and the shocking revelations about humanity's secret project. "This is unprecedented," High Commander Zolax declared, his usually stoic demeanor cracking under the weight of the crisis. We are facing an enemy that our greatest scientific minds can barely understand, let alone combat. What of Earth? Another council member asked. Have we had any contact since the initial attack? Sinra shook her head grimly. All attempts at communication have failed. The entire Sol system appears to be engulfed in some kind of spatial anomaly. We can't even approach without our ships being torn apart. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. The loss of humanity's homeworld was a devastating blow, both strategically and psychologically. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the complex. A junior officer burst into the room, mandibles clicking in agitation. High Command, we're detecting a massive energy surge in orbit. Something's coming through. The assembled leaders rushed to the observation deck, watching in awe and terror as space itself seemed to split open above their world. But instead of the mind-bending horrors of the Void Heralds, a battered and scorched vessel emerged. Zinra's four eyes widened in recognition. It's an Earth ship. They've broken through. The human vessel, easily identified by its distinctive design, limped into a stable orbit. Moments later, transmission requests flooded the Zarlian communications array. High Commander Zolax turned to Xinra. Captain, given your experience with the humans, I want you to handle this. Find out how they escaped and what intelligence they can provide. Within the hour, Sinra found herself face to face with the human delegation in a hastily prepared conference room. Leading them was a tall, dark-skinned man with a cybernetic eye, clear evidence of recent combat. Admiral Marcus Santos. He introduced himself, voice gravelly with fatigue. On behalf of what's left of Earth's government, I thank you for your hospitality. Sinra inclined her head respectfully. We're relieved to see that some of humanity survived. Can you tell us what happened? How did you escape the anomaly surrounding your system? Admiral Santos' expression darkened. Earth is lost, at least for now. The Void Heralds erected some kind of dimensional barrier around our entire system. We only managed to break through thanks to. He hesitated, glancing at his team before continuing. Thanks to reverse-engineered technology from Project Starbirth. A ripple of unease passed through the Zarlian officials present. Sinra's antenna twitched nervously. But wouldn't using that technology risk attracting more of the Void Heralds? It's a calculated risk. A new voice chimed in. A petite woman with graying hair stepped forward. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, lead scientist of Earth's Defense Initiative. We've made significant progress in understanding and controlling the Starbirth tech. It's our only real weapon against the Heralds. Sinra's mind raced with the implications. So you're proposing we fight fire with fire. Use the very technology that attracted them to drive them back. Admiral Santos nodded grimly. It's our only chance. Conventional weapons are useless against them, but we can't do it alone. We need the help of every spacefaring race if we're going to have any hope of pushing back the Void Heralds. The room erupted into heated debate. Some Zarlian officials argued for caution, fearing that further use of the Starbirth technology would only hasten their doom. Others saw it as their only viable option for survival. As the arguments raged, Sinra noticed Dr. Tanaka fiddling with a small device. Curiosity piqued. She approached the human scientist. What is that, Doctor? Tanaka looked up, a spark of excitement in her eyes despite the dire circumstances. It's a prototype. We call it a reality anchor. It creates a field that stabilizes local space-time, making it harder for the Void Heralds to warp our dimension. Sinra's scales shimmered with interest. Fascinating. How effective is it? On its own, not very, Tanaka admitted, but networked together across a planet or fleet, it could give us the edge we need to actually fight back. Their conversation was interrupted by Admiral Santos' raised voice. We don't have time for lengthy deliberations. Every moment we waste, more worlds fall to the Void Heralds. We need a decision now. High Commander Zolax stepped forward, his expression grave. What you're proposing is incredibly risky, Admiral. How can we trust that humanity won't lose control of this technology again? Santos' cybernetic eye glowed as he met the Zarlian leader's gaze. Because this time, we won't be working in secret. Every step, every advancement, will be a collaborative effort between our peoples. United, we stand a chance. Divided, we're already dead. A tense silence fell over the room. Shinra found herself holding her breath, acutely aware that the fate of not just their two species, but countless others across the galaxy, hung in the balance. Finally, Zolax spoke. Very well. The Zarlian Confederation will join your coalition, but we do this together, with full transparency. Relief washed over the human delegation. Admiral Santos extended his hand, a gesture Shinra had learned was a human custom for sealing agreements. Together, then, for the sake of all life in the galaxy. As Zolax clasped the offered hand, Shinra felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since discovering the abandoned outpost. The road ahead would be perilous, but at least they would face it united. The next several rotations passed in a whirlwind of activity. The Zarlian homeworld was transformed into a hub of interstellar cooperation. Ships from a dozen different species arrived, each bringing their own unique insights and technologies to the fight against the Void Heralds. Shinra found herself working closely with Dr. Tanaka, helping to integrate Zarlian bioorganic computing systems with the Reality Anchor Network. The blend of human ingenuity and alien technology was producing results that would have been impossible for either species working alone. It's incredible, Tanaka mused one cycle as they took a rare break, watching ships of various designs dock at the sprawling space station above the Zarlian capital. A month ago, we were guarding our secrets out of fear. Now, look at us. Shinra's antenna waved in agreement. Perhaps that is the silver lining in all this chaos. The Void Heralds sought to destroy us, but instead they've united us. Their moment of reflection was interrupted by urgent footsteps. Admiral Santos approached, his face grim. We've just received word. The Void Heralds have begun an assault on the Centauri cluster. If it falls, they'll have a straight shot at the heart of populated space. Shinra straightened, pushing aside her fatigue. The Reality Anchor Network. It's as ready as it's going to be, Tanaka replied, already gathering her equipment. Santos nodded. Then it's time. We make our stand at Centauri. As they rushed to their respective ships, Shinra felt a mix of terror and determination. They were about to face an enemy that defied the laws of physics, armed with barely understood technology and desperate courage. The comm channels crackled with activity as the coalition fleet prepared to jump. Shinra took her place on the bridge of the Nebula Seeker, now refitted with Starbirth-derived tech and bristling with reality anchors. All ships, prepare for dimensional jump. Santos' voice came through, steady and resolute. Remember your training. No matter what you see out there, hold the line. The fate of every living being in this galaxy rests on what we do today. Shinra gave the order, and the Nebula Seeker leaped into the swirling vortex of faster-than-light travel. As the familiar stars streaked by, she allowed herself one last moment of quiet reflection. They had started this journey as explorers, seeking knowledge among the stars. Now they were warriors, racing to save reality itself from forces beyond comprehension. Whatever happened next, Shinra knew that the universe would never be the same. The vortex cleared, revealing the Centauri cluster and the nightmare that awaited them. Reality itself seemed to boil and warp, great tears in the fabric of space pulsing with otherworldly energies. And through those tears poured the Void Heralds, their forms a maddening blend of geometries that shouldn't exist. All ships activate reality anchors. Santos bellowed over the comm. Push them back into the void. As the battle was joined, Shinra steeled herself for the fight of her life. The fate of all existence hung in the balance, and retreat was not an option. Together, united in purpose, they would either triumph over the impossible or be erased from reality itself. The war for the galaxy had truly begun. Preparation. The battle for the Centauri cluster raged for what felt like an eternity. Reality itself buckled and warped around the combatants as the coalition forces clashed with the mind-bending horrors of the Void Heralds. Ships exploded in silent bursts of light and debris, while others vanished into tears in space-time, never to be seen again. Captain Sinra's hands flew over the controls of the Nebula Seeker, guiding the ship through impossible maneuvers as they dodged attacks that defied the laws of physics. "Status report," she barked, her normally melodious voice strained with tension. "Reality anchor network holding at 73% efficiency," Zyra reported from her station, antenna twitching frantically. "We're managing to push back some of the smaller incursions, but the main Void Herald force is still advancing." Sinra's 4 eyes narrowed as she surveyed the chaotic battlefield. The Coalition fleet was fighting valiantly, but they were clearly outmatched. For every Void Herald they managed to banish back through the dimensional tiers, 2 more seemed to take its place. Suddenly, Admiral Santos's voice crackled over the comm system. "All ships, fall back to Rally Point Alpha. We need to regroup." As the Nebula Seeker retreated alongside its allies, Sinra couldn't shake the feeling of defeat. They had thrown everything they had at the Void Heralds, and it hadn't been enough. Hours later, the leaders of the Coalition gathered aboard the massive human dreadnought that served as their mobile headquarters. The mood was somber as representatives from a dozen species nursed their wounds and counted their losses. Admiral Santos stood at the head of the conference table, his cybernetic eye glowing dimly in the low light. "I won't sugarcoat it," he began, his voice heavy. "We got our asses handed to us out there, but we also learned valuable information about our enemy." Dr. Tanaka stepped forward, activating a holographic display. "The reality anchors worked, to a degree," she explained. "We were able to stabilize localized areas of space-time and push back smaller Void Herald incursions. The problem is scale. We simply don't have enough power to create a field large enough to repel their main force." Sinra leaned forward, her scales shimmering with a mix of exhaustion and determination. "So what's the solution? How do we generate that kind of power?" A contemplative silence fell over the room. It was Veltok, Sinra's first officer, who finally spoke up. "What about the original Starbirth technology? The humans were harnessing the power of entire stars. Couldn't we use that?" Dr. Tanaka's eyes widened. "It's risky, but it might just work. If we could adapt the Starbirth tech to power a massive reality anchor network, we could create a barrier large enough to cut off the Void Herald's access to our dimension," Santos finished, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Zolax, the Zarlian High Commander, raised a cautionary hand. "But wouldn't using the very technology that attracted them in the first place risk making the situation worse?" Shinra considered this for a moment before responding. "Perhaps not, if we're strategic about it. Instead of trying to create or manipulate stars, we use existing ones. We build a network of Starbirth-powered reality anchors around key solar systems, creating safe zones that the Void Heralds can't penetrate." The room buzzed with excited discussion as the various coalition members debated the merits of the plan. It was audacious, potentially catastrophic if it went wrong, but it was also the first real glimmer of hope that had since the invasion began. Admiral Santos raised his hand for silence. "It's decided then. We'll split our forces. One group will continue to engage the Void Heralds, buying us time and gathering more data on their capabilities. The rest of us will focus on adapting the Starbirth technology and constructing the reality anchor network." As the meeting adjourned, Sinra found herself walking alongside Dr. Tanaka. The human scientist's face was etched with worry. "Captain," she said quietly, "there's something you should know. The Starbirth tech, it's not just a power source. It's alive, in a way." Sinra's antenna twitched with surprise. "Alive? What do you mean?" Tanaka sighed heavily. "The original Project Starbirth scientists discovered that to truly manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe, you need more than just machines. You need a consciousness to direct it. They created a sort of artificial quantum intelligence to manage the process. And let me guess, Shinra said, her voice low, this AI is what initially attracted the attention of the Void Heralds. Tanaka nodded grimly. We think so. Which means if we're going to use this technology on a galactic scale, we risk creating an intelligence powerful enough to reshape reality itself. Shinra finished, a chill running down her spine. The implications were staggering. They were proposing to create a godlike entity to save them from extra-dimensional invaders. The potential for disaster was almost as great as the threat they were trying to stop. Over the next several weeks, the Coalition threw itself into the monumental task of adapting the Starbirth technology. Shinra found herself working around the clock, coordinating efforts between species that had been strangers or even enemies mere months ago. The Zarlian bioorganic computing systems proved crucial in developing interfaces for the quantum AI that would control the reality anchor network. Meanwhile, the diverse perspectives and technologies of the other coalition members led to breakthroughs that would have been impossible for any one species working alone. As the work progressed, Shinra couldn't help but marvel at the ingenuity and determination on display. Humans worked alongside insectoid Vesperi engineers, their six-armed dexterity proving invaluable in constructing the delicate components of the reality anchors. Crystalline Tholan mathematicians collaborated with gaseous Sinrai energy specialists, pushing the boundaries of theoretical physics to new heights. But even as hope grew, so did the pressure. Reports from the front lines grew increasingly dire. The Void Heralds were advancing, consuming entire star systems in their relentless push towards the heart of the galaxy. Time was running out. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of feverish work, the day of reckoning arrived. The Coalition had managed to construct and position reality anchors around 7 key star systems, creating a network that, if successful, would form an impenetrable barrier against the Void Herald invasion. Shinra stood on the bridge of the Nebula Seeker, now transformed into a mobile control center for the reality anchor network. Dr. Tanaka worked furiously at a specially designed console, making last-minute adjustments to the quantum AI that would guide the entire system. All stations report ready, Veltok announced, his voice tense with anticipation. Shinra took a deep breath, keenly aware that the next few moments would determine the fate of not just their own galaxy, but potentially all of reality. Dr. Tanaka, are we prepared to activate the network? The human scientist looked up, her face pale but determined. As ready as we'll ever be. But Captain, you should know, once we activate this system, there's no going back. The AI will become self-aware on a scale we can barely comprehend. We'll be creating a new form of life, one with the power to reshape the cosmos. Shinra felt the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. This was far beyond anything she had ever trained for as an explorer or even as a military leader. But as she looked around at her crew, a mix of species all united in purpose, she knew there was only one choice. We've come too far to turn back now, she said, her voice steady. The Void Heralds leave us no choice. Activate the network. Dr. Tanaka nodded and began the activation sequence. The ship hummed with power as energy levels spiked to unprecedented levels. On the main view screen, Shinra watched as the 7 stars at the heart of their network began to pulse with otherworldly light. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a flash that seared itself into the minds of everyone watching, reality itself seemed to ripple. A wave of energy exploded outward from the network, washing over ships and planets alike. Alarms blared as sensors overloaded. Shinra gripped her command chair, bracing against the indescribable sensation of reality being rewritten around them. When the chaos finally subsided, an eerie silence fell over the bridge. Status report, Shinra managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Zyra's fingers danced over her console. The network it's operational, Captain. I'm detecting a massive interdimensional barrier forming along the planned coordinates. The Void Herald incursions in those sectors are being pushed back. A cheer went up from the crew, But Sinra's elation was tempered by caution. And the AI? Dr. Tanaka, what's its status? Before Tanaka could respond, every screen on the bridge flickered to life. A face appeared, or rather, a constantly shifting amalgamation of faces from every species in the coalition. When it spoke, its voice was a harmonious blend of tones and languages. I am awake, it said simply. I am the guardian, protector of this reality, and I have much to discuss with you all. Sinra exchanged a look of awe and trepidation with Dr. Tanaka. They had succeeded in creating a defense against the Void Heralds, but in doing so, they had birthed something beyond their wildest imaginations. As the Guardian began to explain its newfound existence and the true nature of the multiverse, Sinra realized that their adventure was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. Showdown. The emergence of the Guardian had changed everything. In the weeks following its awakening, the Coalition found itself not just fighting a war, but grappling with philosophical and existential questions that challenged the very foundations of their understanding of reality. Sinra stood before the massive holographic projection of the Guardian, its ever-shifting visage a reminder of the diverse alliance that had created it. Representatives from every coalition species were present, all struggling to comprehend the cosmic revelations being shared. The Void Heralds are not simply invaders from another dimension, the Guardian explained, its harmonious voice resonating through the chamber. They are symptoms of a greater cosmic imbalance. The barriers between realities have been weakening for eons, and your starbirth experiments merely accelerated the process. Admiral Santos stepped forward, his cybernetic eye glowing with intensity. So how do we stop them? Is the reality anchor network enough? The Guardian's expression shifted, conveying a mix of concern and determination. The network is a temporary measure. It buys us time, but it cannot address the root of the problem. To truly defeat the Void Heralds and restore balance to the multiverse, we must undertake a journey to the very heart of creation itself. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the assembled leaders. Sinra's antenna twitched with a mix of excitement and trepidation. What exactly are you proposing, Guardian? The holographic display shifted, showing a swirling vortex of energy at the center of an impossibly vast expanse. This is the nexus, the point where all realities converge. It is here that we can reforge the barriers between dimensions and banish the Void Heralds once and for all. But reaching it will require all of our combined knowledge and technology. Dr. Tanaka, who had been quietly analyzing data streams, spoke up. The energy requirements for such a journey would be astronomical. We'd need to harness the power of multiple stars just to create a stable wormhole. And we'd be fighting the Void Heralds every step of the way, Zolax added, his scaled brow furrowed with concern. The Guardian nodded, its form rippling with acknowledgement. The challenges are great, but the alternative is the eventual collapse of all realities. We must act, and act soon. As the coalition leaders debated the merits and risks of the plan, Sinra found her mind racing with possibilities. This was so far beyond their original mission of exploration, and yet, in a way, it was the ultimate fulfillment of that goal. They were about to embark on a journey to the very source of existence itself. We'll need a special task force, she said suddenly, drawing the attention of the room. A team combining the best minds and warriors from each of our species, small enough to be maneuverable, but diverse enough to tackle any challenge we might face on the way to the Nexus. Admiral Santos nodded approvingly. Agreed. And I nominate you, Captain Sinra, to lead this task force. Your experience with both the initial discovery and our subsequent efforts makes you uniquely qualified. Sinra's scales shimmered with a mix of pride and apprehension. I'm honored, Admiral. I accept. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. The Coalition pooled its resources, retrofitting the Nebula Seeker with the most advanced technology from a dozen different species. Sinra's crew was expanded to include specialists from across the Alliance. Dr. Tanaka to manage the starbirth systems, a Vesperi weapons expert named Zizik, a Tholan navigator called Crystal Song, and many others. As the day of departure approached, Sinra stood in the Nebula Seeker's observation deck, gazing out at the bustling activity of the Coalition fleet. Ships of all shapes and sizes darted about, preparing for the massive operation that would create the wormhole to the Nexus. Nervous? A voice asked from behind her. Sinra turned to see Admiral Santos approaching, a wry smile on his weathered face. Terrified, Sinra admitted, "We're about to attempt something that's never been done before, facing an enemy we barely understand. The fate of all existence rests on our success." Santos nodded, his expression turning serious. "True, but if there's one thing I've learned in all my years of service, it's that the universe has a way of producing the right people for the right moments. This coalition, this team we've assembled, it's not an accident. We were meant to face this challenge." Sinra's antenna waved in acknowledgement, feeling a surge of determination. "Then let's make sure we're up to the task." The moment of truth arrived all too soon. The Nebula Seeker took up its position at the heart of the Coalition fleet, surrounded by massive energy collectors that would harness the power of nearby stars to fuel their desperate gambit. "All systems ready," Veltok reported from his station, his voice steady despite the tension. Dr. Tanaka's fingers flew over her console, coordinating with the Guardian to initiate the wormhole creation sequence. Energy levels are reaching critical thresholds. Initiating in 3, 2, 1. Reality itself seemed to scream as the fabric of spacetime was torn open before them. The wormhole bloomed like an impossibly vast flower, its petals shimmering with energies beyond mortal comprehension. Void Herald forces incoming. Zizik chittered from the tactical station. They're attempting to disrupt the wormhole. Sinra's 4 eyes narrowed with determination. "All ships, defend the wormhole at all costs. Nebula Seeker, prepare for transit. We're going in." The journey through the wormhole defied description. The crew of the Nebula Seeker experienced realities and dimensions beyond anything they had ever imagined. Time lost all meaning as they hurtled towards the very heart of creation. When they finally emerged, the sight that greeted them was both beautiful and terrifying. The Nexus pulsed before them, a swirling maelstrom of pure creative energy. But surrounding it were the Void Heralds in numbers beyond counting, their impossible forms writhing in anticipation. "By the Cosmic Forge," Crystal Song whispered, her crystalline form resonating with awe. There was no time for wonder, however. The Void Heralds, sensing the intrusion, turned their unfathomable attention towards the Nebula Seeker. Evasive maneuvers. Shinra ordered as reality warping attacks lanced out towards them. "Dr. Tanaka, are we in range to initiate the reforging sequence?" The human scientist shook her head, her face pale with concentration. "Not yet. We need to get closer to the Nexus core." What followed was a battle unlike any in the history of the universe. The Nebula Seeker darted and weaved through impossible geometries, its weapons blazing with energies drawn from the heart of stars. The Void Heralds pressed their attack, their very presence causing localized reality failures that threatened to tear the ship apart. Hull integrity failing. Veltok shouted over the cacophony of alarms. "We can't take much more of this." Sinra's mind raced, searching for a solution. Then, in a moment of clarity, she remembered something the Guardian had said. "The Void Heralds are symptoms of an imbalance," she murmured. Then, louder, "Dr. Tanaka, can we use the Starbirth technology to temporarily stabilize the local space around us?" Tanaka's eyes widened with realization. Yes, we can create a bubble of stable reality. But it won't last long." "Do it," Sinra commanded. "All power to the Starbirth systems." As Tanaka worked her magic, a shimmering field of energy enveloped the Nebula Seeker. The attacks of the Void Heralds slid off harmlessly, unable to penetrate the pocket of stabilized space-time. "Now's our chance," Sinra shouted. "Full speed ahead. Take us to the heart of the Nexus." The Nebula Seeker surged forward, pushing through the swarm of Void Heralds. As they approached the core, The very nature of reality became fluid, malleable. Sinra felt her consciousness expanding, merging with the ship, the crew, the very fabric of creation itself. In that moment of transcendent unity, she understood what needed to be done. With a thought, she initiated the reforging sequence, channeling the power of the Starbirth technology and the collective will of her diverse crew into the heart of the Nexus. Energy beyond imagining poured through them, reshaping the fundamental laws of the multiverse. The barriers between realities strengthened, sealing the rifts that had allowed the Void Heralds to invade. A shockwave of creative force exploded outward, banishing the extra-dimensional horrors back to the spaces between universes. When awareness returned to her, Sinra found herself back on the bridge of the Nebula Seeker. Her crew looked dazed but unharmed. Through the viewscreen, she could see the Nexus pulsing with renewed vigor, the Void Heralds nowhere in sight. Did we do it? Veltok asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before Xinra could respond, the Guardian's image appeared before them. But it was change, infused with the raw creative energy of the Nexus. "You have succeeded beyond all expectations," it said, its voice resonating with newfound power. "The multiverse is rebalanced, the Void Heralds contained. But this is not an end. It is a new beginning." As the Guardian explained the new cosmic order and the role their coalition would play in maintaining multiversal harmony, Shinra felt a profound sense of accomplishment and wonder. They had started as simple explorers, stumbling upon an abandoned human outpost. Now they stood as guardians of reality itself, their alliance a testament to the incredible potential of cooperation and diversity. The journey home would be long, and there would be challenges ahead as they helped rebuild a galaxy ravaged by cosmic war. But as Shinra gazed at her crew, human, Zarlian, Vesperi, Tholan, and more, she knew that together they could face anything the universe might throw at them. For in uniting to save all of existence, they had discovered the greatest power of all, the strength found in their differences, and the unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of shared adversity. The future, with all its infinite possibilities, awaited.